Good evening, everybody. It's Camden here with Generation Z. Today we're going to get into a lot of dense topics. Zero-point energy is an interesting concept. It builds very well on the gateway process, the VMAT2 gene that I've covered. So first, I want everyone to close their eyes and imagine your made-up scenario with me. Building into thoughts are energy, in turn are matter, right? And manifest themselves. That's kind of the thing we're digging into. So closing your eyes, if you want to see me close my eyes, watch it again. Imagining a bot, an NPC, a person in our reality matrix. For validity's sake, I will say what I'm imagining. I'm imagining this old, middle-aged, whatever, cat lady. She gets into a argument, a legal battle with a celebrity persona, a TikTok person, into a legal battle with a TikTok person over, I swear that's my cat. I have photos of me with that cat from so many years ago. The TikToker, no, I have photos of that cat from years ago, blah, 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 blah. Okay. For whatever reason makes the news, a legal battle over a cat that is identical. Come to find out, well, there are identical cats, right? We've seen it. Okay. Put some density behind that idea. Put some weight. I believe the fuck that this is going to happen. We'll see. Drop a comment. If your hypothetical news story, if your idea, if your brainstorm comes true, I really do want to see, because there seems to be some science behind thinking something and believing it and putting weight into it, and it is energy. So first we're going to jump right in. newscientist.com. Teleporting objects become a real possibility. This is a 2002 article. Dave mentioned it. I found this, built into that. This is what started this. He used it as well. Talking about different things though. Entanglement, right? Quantum entanglement, this bizarre property that allows two particles to behave as one, no matter how far apart they are. The way to go about this is interesting. They've, in 2002, made a beam splitter. Consider the angular momentum or spin of an electron. To entangle the spin of two electrons, you need to make sure they're identical in all respects but their spin. Then you shoot the electrons simultaneously into a beam splitter. This device splits each electron into a quantum state called a superposition, a observable fixed position. Equal probability of traveling down either of the two paths on the sides of this beam splitter. When you try to detect the electron, you know what path it took because you can observe electrons, protons, photons. There is no knowing where they are until you observe them, though, and that's the interesting part. We will get into it. If you split two electrons simultaneously, both paths could have one electron each, about half the time, or one path could have both. Either way, these two particles become entangled because they traveled into the same superposition at the same time, at the same wavelength, frequency, all of those things. Okay. One of the advances we have made is that these two particles could be from completely independent sources, very far away. We're getting into teleporting. We're getting into Star Trek. Okay. To really get behind the science of this, we turn to Dan Winter, a brilliant physicist. He solves problems that physics won't touch. We've used this graphic before. At least the first half. No one will accept your answer that it could be a coincidence that 3 hydrogen radii are precisely golden ratio exponents of Planck. So now you must deal with his answer. He gets into explaining the Planck theory, how they use a Planck measurement. I will explain that. A standard measurable, observable thing in the vacuum of space, right? Only the golden spiral charge compression trajectory allows the phase velocities to interfere recursively, constructively. Therefore, only this geometry turns charge compressions towards center into charge acceleration towards center, named the gravity. So these fields, these energy fields, these electromagnetic fields are in everything. Hydrogen radii being his prime example. Okay. Tesla failed to achieve efficient global wireless power distribution because he didn't implement coherent longitudinal interferometry, which requires the fractal spacing of the Dodeck ICOS Earth grid nodes and the correct frequencies to phase conjugate implosively. We have talked about these ley lines recently, right? If we get into the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence spiral, fractals at the smallest scale, subatomic, at the medium scale, humans, at the grand scale, Earth and beyond, the pattern is the same. The wave, the energy is the same. We are all electric beings, whether it be a single atom, a human, or the Earth, right? So conjugtivity is important. Conjugation, phase conjugation, that's a better way to say it. The golden ratio, caduceus, phase conjugation, and self-similarity wave mechanics produce constructive compression, creating acceleration from compression. So because they are going out, they are also compressing further in. As above, so below, as out, so in, I guess you could say, right? Here we have the Schumann resonance is on this scale. It is of these golden ratios. Humans, further on down this scale, we are on the same fractal. You get what I'm saying? Now, a lot of those words, very fucking confusing, very dense. Planck units. In particle physics and physical cosmology, Planck units are a set of units of measurement defined exclusively in terms of 4 universal physical constants. These physical constants are observable. They are typically measurable. And they're constant. They are always there. They are always acting. Okay, so the 4 universal constants would be the speed of light in a vacuum, kind of wrong, a gravitational constant, that same inert gravity that things have. If you're out in space in the vacuum, an object has its own gravity. It's on that same fractal. It's on as the universe, as that giant torus in the gateway process video, right? Okay. Reduced Planck constant, which is his own derived value, and the Boltzmann constant. These are all applicable. Planck units do not incorporate an electromagnetic dimension, though, immediately after. Why is that? Would that solve too many problems? Would that create too much chaos? Maybe. He also mentions negentropy, not negative entropy, is used as a measure of distance to normality, to a state of rest. What is at rest will stay at rest. What is in motion will stay at motion. You can incorporate Newtonian physics into all of this, right? Schrodinger's box. If I had been catering for the physicist alone, I should have let the discussion turn to free energy instead. It is the more familiar notion in this context, but this is a highly technical term and seemed linguistically too near to energy for making the average reader alive to the contrast between the two things, because energy is an acting force. Free energy in his context is almost a reacting force. I think that's my best way to say it. It is in the absolute, these wavelengths. We will turn again to the gateway process video. Think of those wavelengths at their crests and falls. They're in the absolute. It makes no sense why they would turn around. But here, quantum tunneling, we can only observe and see where atoms are when we observe them. So like, we have to understand here, it says, particles do not have a defined position, space, or time until they are observed. So these models that you do in theory is your average line. That yellow line going through the middle, that is your average of your guessed position, because in theory, the thing you are observing isn't there, so you're not observing it, right? That is important, because in this quantum mechanics thing, the observable points are what has to match up. If you were to observe a photon electron at its peak or valley of that wavelength, it would be at that point in the absolute. It would be unobservable to a human, because we are not of the absolute innately. That's the difference there. We have to use that yellow line because we can't use either end, right? So building into Dave's mentions of quantum tunneling, into quantum mechanics, all of this quantum stuff, it really is dependent on the wave, on the vibration. Things in 0 point field innately still vibrate. They can't not. There is a baseline, I guess is a good way to call it. Now, building right on top of that, scientists teleport in 2017 a particle hundreds of kilometers. But what does that mean, right? So we had 2002 theory. 2017, they said they did it. Okay. Quantum teleportation doesn't actually involve teleporting a real object. It isn't really teleportation at all. The scientists are actually sending information, so qubits, DNA information. You could really, I guess, end up calling this cloning, not teleporting, right? You are creating a copy of this thing over here, over there, by entangling these two electromagnetic points. Last winter, in 2017, 2016, then, China launched a satellite called Micius, designed to test communications based on the principles of quantum mechanics over large distances. They released their first results last month, demonstrating that they could entangle particles over record distances. Entanglement is a consequence of the fact that in quantum physics, the scientific theory governing the smallest particles. Humans can't determine photons' exact properties until they look at them. That thing of Schrodinger's cat, right? A example that this article gives. Let's say there are two bags, and each has one of two balls, red ball, green ball. You give a bag to your friend. Quantum mechanics only gives the probabilities that your bag contains either ball color. That's all you know before making the observation of the ball color you have. At human scale, both bags contain a red or green ball at the same time. Because of that, they can be entangled. Quantum mechanics says both balls are red and green at the same time until you look, until you observe it, until you put an energy, a thought, a wavelength at it for it to be observed. Strange. For it to receive energy and matter, therefore. Think of the video game. It renders what you look at as you turn, right? It doesn't render that stuff behind you. It's not observed. Interesting. We will now get into some wordy language, heavy documents. But this is 0 point fields, gravitation, and new physics from the University of Waterloo in Ontario. This is credentialed, you would say, to the very least, right? This is from Stanford. This is from accredited on this paper, but we just helped around, is Lockheed Martin. So that's interesting. That's amazing. We have to look at this. Scrolling through, let you guys read. We are going to go right down to, because this is so heavy, this is so dense, I admittedly think I have a grip on it. Barely, right? Barely. This is, people work their lives for these things. These are doctorate, dissertation level things. So, down here. The history of Mach's principle is long. There are several different formulations in it in literature. It is widely conceded that Einstein's theory of general relativity is not Machian. There is a consensus among researchers that an extension of that theory would be appealing if it gave an account to the properties of particles in terms of some cosmological field. Interesting. Because general relativity is the accepted version, I don't know why we haven't innovated physics in so long. You can't build in Machian theory, what this talks about here at the end, because it is observing a different cosmological field. It is making it up of something different. It's no longer a vacuum, right? Scrolling on down, I want to get to the conclusions. That's where we're really seeing what they have to say through all this. Outstanding problems. These are interesting. There is generally agreed, no generally agreed theory on quantum gravity. Dan Winter may disagree, but its existence is a constant. Its existence of the constants raises a question of why their dimensional products of length, time, and mass are not natural parameters of the theory. I'll take a shot. I would argue because it is not staying in the confines of your length, time, and mass, right? It's not any one observable place because it is in the absolute. It is in the everything. It is collective consciousness, creator spirit, whatever you want to call it. It is that spark at the beginning. That's where it is. nowhere yet. You have to put that density, that weight, that mass behind it. Right. Now, if the electromagnetic zero-point field is real, it does in principle provide a new source of energy that has potential applications to technology. Spacecraft propulsion, thanks for saying that. Recommendations for research. They admittedly do say they want to investigate this. Letting you guys read. Okay, conclusions. Zero-point fields are predicted by interactions which are well described by quantum mechanics, if we accept them as practical. But the energies involved do not manifest themselves either in terms of the curvature of spacetime as formalized in general relativity, or in the energy density of the cosmological vacuum as measured by the cosmological constant. Like I said, unobservable. They're in that absolute. They're out of the space-time jail. We think of them as this box we're stuck in, metal bars in prison, but they're rubber. Bend them, get out, right? Now, to explain it like I'm 5, because I needed that. Honestly, from the Huffington Post. Kind of weird, but I'll take it. 2011. The vacuum state is the quantum state with the lowest possible energy. It contains no physical particles. It is the energy of the ground state. Think of being grounded. Okay. This is also called zero-point energy, not just zero field. The energy of a system at the temperature is zero. Quantum mechanics says that even in their ground state, all systems still maintain fluctuations and have an associated zero-point energy as a consequence of their wave-like nature. Everything is a wave. Everything. Light, matter, energy, sound, waves. Thus, even a particle cooled down to absolute zero will still exhibit some vibrations. Helium is their example here. It will stay liquid. A cold liquid, but it will stay liquid. This would seem to imply that a vacuum state or vacuum is not empty at all. It's not a vacuum, right? That is the misnomer that is space. Instead, collectively called the zero-point field, the vacuum state contains, according to quantum mechanics, fleeting electromagnetic waves and virtual particles that pop into and out of existence at a whim. I think they try to make this dark matter. It's not, right? It's not. It is thoughts, feelings, objects, intentions. It is waves, and it is everywhere. It is everything. It is undeniable, yet still unobservable. We can see the straight lines in between, those curves, those valleys. They don't make sense yet. Can energy be measured or even calculated? The Casimir effect. In this experiment, two conducting plates are brought parallel to each other with an electromagnetic field in between them. In all of these experiments, they seem to be using electromagnetics, right? But disregarded from Planck's constants. Okay. The Casimir effect is often cited as evidence of a sea of zero-point energy throughout the universe. Another possible manifestation might be the cosmological constant, so well used in cosmology, some say it might be a measure of the zero-point energy. If the cosmological constant is a measure, it doesn't make sense to me because zero-point energy is not constant in terms of staying here. Things come out of it, right? It goes up and then maybe levels back down to its ground state, right? But it's not constant. Albert Einstein and Otto Stern performed an analysis of the specific heat of hydrogen at low temperatures and discovered the available data was best fit if the vibrational energy was represented by the equation there. It's interesting that these unobservable fields seem to have observable impact on our reality, right? Here we turn to a leaked CIA doc, Star Wars Now. 1984. The bomb Arohanov effect is interesting. This beginning part, you don't really need to see, right? I mean, I'm scrolling so you guys can read it, but we get down here to these figures. Observe them, right? Okay. The stress level on space-time, the compressive stress, the tensile stress. working right back into that Dan Winter theory. This is the CIA's docs. It seems weird that they wouldn't have people talking about this, or that he's so maligned. This gets into substructures, the subatomic levels like we've been talking about. Wireless transmission of energy at a distance, though. To illustrate one remarkable, though typical, implication of this breakthrough area, we point out that by changing the potentials while keeping the force fields zero, one can directly produce energy at a distance as if it were transported through space without losses. Lossless compression, and then expansion. Ooh. Even though no energy transmission through space in the normal fashion occurs as such, literally entangling particles so far apart, you know, and can observe this particle over here, all the way back on the other side of Earth even. You have a mirroring quantum particle wave you get what I'm saying. And because of that, you can superposition them, like we mentioned at the beginning. Now, electrostatic scalar potential, for example, may be regarded as a sort of locked-in stress energy of a vacuum. Things that can't escape what we call that vacuum. They haven't got enough weight, mass, and energy behind them, right? That wavelength is roller coastering in the zero-point field. Changing the potential in a region or at a point changes the amount of locked-in or enfolded vacuum energy available. Because you act on it, because you put intention, thought, and feeling behind it, it becomes acted on. Scrolling down here, scalar wave beam is an interesting one, doesn't fully apply here. Models that they have here are very good visualizations, honestly. That cross section, that is your energy bottle. You are beam splitting, like we talked about at the beginning, except now crossing them. Scalar interferometer, sorry. That is a bundle of trapped, locked-in stress, energy, whatever they called it. Okay. A full life-size diagram. You need room for these experiments, right? No more room than could be underground. Now, getting into the interesting applications of this, because this is zero-point energy. This is free energy. They would not want anyone to ever have this. Okay. Weaponization. This is something we have to talk about. If two zero-field scalar wave beams are crossed in a different region, real physical effects exist in that distant interference zone. In short, one may create a transmitting scalar interferometers to produce energetic effects at a distance. Because you've entangled that thing over here with this interferometer that you're blasting an energy bottle at, okay, or creating an energy bottle, you really do have to take away this vacuum theory, this nothing is there. It is empty space. Nothing is empty space anymore, right? If we accept this. Now, an interesting one, this is building into their weaponization. Highly energetic scalar pulse can synchronously transmitted by each of the two remote transmitters, then in the distant interference zone where the two pulses intersect, an impulsive emergence of ordinary electromagnetic energy occurs. Better than nukes, better than... There's been a video leaked where you've had a UFO fly around a supposed nuke and supposedly disarm it, blue beams shoot out of it, and then it just falls to the ground, right? This would be that. And this was in 1984. Here it is reversed. You can do it from the ground to a aircraft. You can do it from an aircraft to a radar. Here they explain their problems with the vacuum theory, right? Okay. Extraction of a distant energy. A second highly strategic implication is that of the scalar interferometer connection between transmitter sites and distance interference zones can be viewed somewhat as a sort of electrical ground wire. These interference zones can be natural. Think ley lines, think nodes, or they can be created with these interferometers. Okay. Establishing a resonance between the distant site and the projector sites, randomized field zeroing that occurs in the natural temperature oscillations at a distant site can be utilized to extract energy from the site to the projectors. What? What? We've talked about the ionization that churches go through. drawing that energy to somewhere else where they need it. Here is a cold explosion that was near a supposed Russian test site off the coast of Japan. Okay. Gray white cloud appeared 350 miles away from Soviet's supposed test site. They flew planes through it to see what was up. No contamination, non-nuclear. You saw how big this cloud was. 150 miles in diameter. Too deep for submarine volcano to cause cloud. It couldn't have been, right? Indicates a man-made phenomena in Soviet Arctic, non-volcanic area, non-nuclear. It, upon flying through, was solid material. It was mostly ice, a little clay, much colder than the surrounding air. Not a nuke. No volcanic material, no radioactive material. Only examined satellite imagery in the winter. They could only periodically have coverage over Russia. Okay. Cloud seeding, maybe, is their supposed reason for this, maybe. There's no evidence to say that a storm came from it, or that this cloud then did something with its being seeded. Okay. Energy extraction strategic systems have recently become apparent. Since 1974, very large anomalous mushroom-shaped ice cloud formations have been repeatedly produced over the Soviet Arctic and detected by the U.S. They've been doing this. I mean, further on down, you can see where they talk about using this in a different way even. The Soviets have been doing this for decades, but utilizing three-dimensional truncated Fourier expansion techniques, which is explained. Pause it anytime and read this. Multiple transmitted frequencies, the scalar interferometer beams can be made to interfere in specific geometric patterns, such as a giant hemispheric shell of glowing energy. Iron Dome. The Soviets have engaged in weaponizing scalar electromagnetics. This is the key. We are not told about it for nearly 3 decades. We talked about the Russian general that said all you had to do was fine-tune the human consciousness and contact was easy. Why is these kind of things hidden from us? We have to talk about that, right? Is it detrimental to their money-making schemes? Probably. That's really the simplest answer, right? Here we have a paper from NASA. Inertia and gravitation in the zero-point field model, right? Scrolling down through the sources, we begin to see that there is a simplified but nonetheless quantitative link between hypothesized gravitational vector points and inertia. Building right back into Dan Winter. It's so strange to me that they would malign him the way they have when he is right on the fucking money, you know? So we have the absolute. We have this energy field accessible to humans. We are an energy wave. We, stay between the lines so often, but we hit those peaks and valleys. Like I talked about at the beginning, this manifestation, it's possible and applicable in all of these documented experiments. They do it on grand scale, but we're talking human scale. That fractal, it expands to that big, it goes to that small. You, through practice, through maybe psychedelics is a cheat code, but you still have to understand what you're seeing, so it's not really a cheat code. This is accessible, right? You can decide that thoughts and intentions have weight behind them, have more stress, and they break out of that 0-point field. They really do. That's what all of this is pointing to. We have to admit that our physics has been lied to. We have been, it's just a coincidence. We have been misled. And the papers are out there to realign us, right? Interesting metaphor there. So, really dense topic. Let me guys know what you think. I hope you guys really did enjoy it. We had a great time with Sam Tripoli yesterday. That episode was amazing. I recommend our subscribers go check it out as well. Tinfoil Hat. And we'll see you this weekend. Cheers.